Alright, hello, citizens of the Nigerverse. It is Niger once again, and welcome back to System Shock Radio. It is not only episode 1 on 170, I should say, 170, my apologies, but it is the final episode of System Shock Radio for the year, for 2024. 2024 has been a bit of a roller coaster for a lot of people, especially myself included. Because of that, a lot has happened. A lot I wish did happen, but no use crying over spilled milk. But here's to hoping that 2025 will be better for a lot of people, myself included. Not to say, hey, good things didn't happen for me this year, and I hope it's likewise the same for you. But yes, but I don't know quite where I was going with that spiel. Just kind of mentioning it as the year winds down. But in the meantime, it's time for another episode of System Shock Radio, and like I said, this will be the final episode for 2024 as we move into the new year. Of course, today's topic, I think you're going to find interesting. I think you're going to find this one quite a bit interesting as we talk about it. But before we actually do that, if this is your first episode of System Shock Radio, welcome. If not, welcome back. But if you are indeed new here, we talk about a variety of things here on System Shock Radio. We talk about we talk about pop culture, we talk about comic books, we talk about wrestling, we talk about current events, we do some inspiration, and we discuss a variety of things. So if that is your sort of thing, if that does suit your fancy, of course, then consider hitting that subscribe button as well as leaving a like, a comment, and subscribing as well. Alright, just getting something set up here in the meantime. But yeah, so considering the subscribe button, leaving a like, comment, all that good stuff. But without further ado, let's get into today's topic. Of course, it's because this is the 5th episode. Every 5 episodes I do a bit of a special episode, and this one is one that's kind of been. It's been in the archives for a little bit. It's one I've wanted to talk about for a little bit. Not sure whether I wanted to do for a little bit. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do a discussion video or save it for System Shock Radio. And because I saw that kind of the special episode in a way was coming up, I figured I'd save it for System Shock Radio. So today's question that we'll be seeking to talk about and answer is emulating video games a bad thing? Is emulation good or bad? Now, this question, and actually, before we do that, I want to kind of define emulation. And there's a couple different definitions, but there's one specifically that I'm talking about. The first, which isn't really what we're talking about, although it can kind of tie into it, is the effort to match or surpass a person or achievement, typically by imitation. Now, that's kind of what emulation seems to do, but that's not really the definition we're looking for. The second one is closer to it, though, and that is reproduction of the function or action of a different computer, software system, etc. Like I said, this has been in the archives for a bit because it's been a debate for a while now, ever since emulators were created, and emulators have been around for a bit, and there's several different types of video game emulators out there, which is why the second definition I'm going for, because we're talking about video game emulation, and there's several different video game emulators out there, and for several different video game consoles. You have some for the Nintendo consoles, such as your Game Boy, is your Nintendo 64, here's your Wii, DS, what have you. You have the PlayStation family, that being 1 through 5, even PSP, PS Vita, and you have your emulators for Xbox, obviously being, the first Xbox 360, Xbox One, Series S, X, stuff like that. So, people have debated the ethics. Is emulation a good thing? And if you listen to the video game publishers and developers, they'll probably tell you it's not a good thing, but it's been debated quite a bit. So I figured I'd kind of talk about it, kind of try to argue both sides to this topic, because admittedly, it's not quite as black and white as it seems. There is a bit of a gray area, so we're going to kind of delve into both sides. Now, me personally, I say emulation is like whether or not emulation is good or bad. Me personally, my personal thoughts is it depends on what you use it for, right? And that I think that's mainly where that gray area comes in. Now, how I have used emulators before, video game emulators before, but me personally, I use them to play games that aren't quite accessible, like as easily accessible on modern hardware. Unfortunately, while there are a lot of remasters, remakes, what have you, of different games, some games get lost in the archive. Some games are locked to the consoles that they came out on in the first place. For example, the old school SmackDown versus Raw games, or the older SmackDown games. A lot of movie tie-in games, or other types of like tie-in games, pretty much used to promote a movie, because there was that era where a lot of them were getting made, and not all of them were bad, but so there's things like that. There's certain games that, for licensing, for copyright, can't be carried over into later consoles. You know what I mean? So games like that are why I have used emulators, and why a lot of people have used emulators, and that, I think, is one of the biggest arguments for emulators, is because a lot of times a lot of the IPs that have games on the older consoles that aren't quite as easily available, unless you have a boatload of cash on you, because the console itself and the game usually go for a very high price on like eBay or other sites and everything. A lot of people want to play those games. A lot of people want to experience those games, and oftentimes they aren't quite able to. So that's where emulators come in. Having a software / device, whether it be like computer like here, or even modifying a different video game console, such as like your PlayStation or your Switch, to run different games from different eras. For a lot of people, it allows them to play games that they otherwise would have to get at the console for, like get the specific console, and possibly pay a pretty penny for said games. There are several games I've wanted to play that are super duper expensive on eBay, especially a lot of games that were very niche titles, or that didn't have a lot of releases in the first place, have been lost to time, what have you. Like I said, a lot of games have been ported over. The Sonic games from like the Genesis era have been brought over by the developers, have been brought over to several different consoles, to the PlayStation, to DS, to Xbox. Hell, you can play Sonic on your phone. They have like the Sonic game on like the App Store, and I'll actually show you. So, that game's been ported over. Nintendo has the Nintendo has the Switch expansion for the Switch. They have the expansion pass, the membership. It allows you to play games from like the NES, the SNES, the Nintendo 64, stuff like that. So there is that. PlayStation remasters games almost all the time. I'm not just for PS4 but for PS5 and everything, and yeah, as you can see, I'm gonna click on Sega here, or as you can see, got the apps here. Here, just want to show it's got stuff like Shining Force Classics. If it'll focus on my phone, might have to turn my light off. Let me see if that works. Works. Not really, but they do have like Crazy Taxi. They got the Sonic the Hedgehog episodes 1 and 2 that nobody played. They got you see Virtua Tennis. So you know what I mean. So there's ways that you can play these games. There's certain ways that you can play certain games, but not all games are accessible. Like I said, oftentimes it's for licensing, or in the case of like the like WWE games where it has certain people that can't really mention in WWE anymore, such as Chris Benoit, of course, or pretty much everything from SmackDown to all the way to SmackDown versus Raw 2007, and is probably a no-go, more than likely a no-go, and so they more than likely don't feel like it's viable to really bring those games to the forefront. And so that's where emulators come in, and that's what I think is the main argument a lot of people use for preserving emulators, keeping emulators, to preserve the games for preservation purposes. Actually, I'll kind of touch on it more in closing, but that's the argument a lot of people make, and that's my argument I make, is for preservation, and because a lot of people still want to play these games, a lot of people haven't experienced these games, and so having emulators, having technology to be able to access these games without having to fork over hundreds, maybe, or even thousands of dollars, for this game is a really cool thing. Now there are a number of people who are against emulators. Like I said, like the aforementioned developers and everything, and their arguments. Some of their arguments are understandable. Well, if maybe not always reasonable, but understandable. Like one of the main ones being piracy. There are some people who use emulators so that they don't have to pay for like the current games that just came out. They can get it. They can get a cracked version on their console and everything, and essentially, in a way, steal the game and everything. Hey, you remember the old school piracy commercials that used to play on DVDs? You know, you wouldn't steal a car, you wouldn't steal a purse. So there are certain people who use that, who use it for those purposes. And I think that for a lot of people, that's the biggest argument against emulators, is people using it for nefarious purposes. Is another argument that could be made is that a lot of emulators aren't very good. Sadly, not all emulators are created equal. Some emulators make the game run very slow, and make the game very much a chore to play. Like, again, that's the only way you're able to play it. Like that, having a bad emulator. And you know what? Some of the aforementioned like the Nintendo Switch Online expansion service, or like the PlayStation like remastered games, I mentioned that they're available. I didn't say they were always good. But take for example like the GTA Definitive Trilogy. How many that one's technically kind of bordering on remake almost, because her like HD remaster where like they polished it up, it looked all shiny and everything, but it was broken for quite a while. They just finally fixed it this year, or so. Even like in-house built-in emulator, or like emulation services, what have you, from the actual developers aren't always great. So a lot of people kind of use that to kind of downplay the role of emulators. So you may be wondering, Nigel, what's your stance on this? Me personally, I would argue in favor of preservation, like being able to play games that you might have missed out on, or you get that childhood nostalgic itch, and you're like, oh man, I remember this game from my childhood, I want to play it again. Having an emulator available to be able to do that is a really cool thing. And me, I find myself kind of in both camps, where certain games I'm like, I missed out on it previously when it came out, versus oh man, I remember this game from when I was a kid. It such as like Crash Twinsanity, my first Crash game playing up, or like the old school WWE games, or like the Spider-Man movie tie-in games. They weren't always good, but they definitely were a part of my childhood. And oftentimes I also do kind of play it to see if it held up or is gonna didn't really hold up as well. Oh, but that I think you can argue for emulators in that regard. Like piracy and everything, obviously, that's bad, and so I think that's an understandable argument, and for emulation and or against emulation, I should say, that's a understandable argument against emulation. And is, what if they pirate it? What if they try to steal it? What if they try to get games essentially for free? And some games do have the anti-piracy measures in effect. Even Spyro had an anti-piracy message in Spyro 3. But in terms of preservation, why punish the masses for a few bad apples? Well, and the reason I say punish is because some of these developers have gone after certain emulators and made them take down emulators. They took down certain emulators. I believe that's how Dolphin Emulator was taken down. If it was no, not Dolphin Man, Dolphin Emulator. I forgot which emulator it was that was shut down by Nintendo. Nope, Dolphin's still up and running. Look up emulator shut down by Nintendo. Oh, but yeah, Yuzu. That's what it was. Ryujinx. So the O's got shut down by Nintendo, I believe, earlier this year. Or actually, it was shut down like a couple months ago. But yeah, so some of them have gone after the emulators, which has caused some outcry, because it's like, why shut down the emulators when it's games you're not bringing up to modern consoles anyway? Like, you're not bringing these games up, and if you do, you're not doing a good job at it. So, why not let this emulator stay up? It's not costing you money because it's not games you're actively selling. Why take down these emulators? So the debate on whether or not emulation is good or bad rages on. Like I said, it depends on what you use it for. Or like, if you're using it for nefarious purposes, if you're using it to get the newest games for free, then ultimately, that is your business. But obviously that's a big argument against it. But if you're using it for the sake of preservation, for the sake of preserving certain games and stuff like that, I think in that regard it's fine. But now the question is, what do you guys think? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and turn on post notifications so you know every time I upload a video, you can see it as soon as it drops. And let me know in the comments below your thoughts on what we talked about in this episode of System Shock Radio. What are your thoughts on emulation? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it's a little bit of both? Well, let me know. But thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later, and I will see you guys with System Shock Radio in 2025. A lot of content is going to be pumped out as the year is winding down. But as for System Shock Radio, signing off until 2025. I will see you guys later. Peace.